This is not a campaign budget. That is a violence budget. And the person who signed it won the election. This is the story of how that works and who pays for it. I've taken the liberty of drafting a checklist. 1. Print your manifesto, preferably with a photograph of yourself looking at something in the distance. 2. Record your campaign song. The word pamoja or together is mandatory. 3. Source your campaign merchandise. Caps, t-shirts, branded kangas. 4. Identify your flashpoint constituencies. These are the areas where your supporters and the opposition supporters have historically been encouraged to interact. 5. Contact your broker. He knows what you need. He's been doing this since 1997. 6. Allocate the logistic budget. This covers transport, airtime, and what the accountant will later describe as community outreach. 7. Prepare your post-violence press statement. Templates are available on request. The last one was a joke. So them sadly want. Here is what nobody in the press conference version of Kenyan politics wants you to notice. The violence doesn't move. Election after election, the same constituencies burn. The same communities, the same timing, the same organized chaos, calibrated to a specific political purpose. That is not spontaneous. That is not the unfortunate byproduct of democratic passion. That, my friends, is infrastructure. The question isn't why this keeps happening. The question is who keeps paying for it. And more importantly, who is paying for them. I want to talk about a word. One specific word that Kenyan journalism has used so consistently for so long that we've stopped noticing what it does. The word is clashes. When two groups clash, the framing implies equivalence, mutual aggression, both sides swinging, passion, disorder, regrettable but understandable human friction. What it does not suggest is a phone call made 3 weeks earlier. What it does not even suggest is an envelope changing hands. In 2017, after the contested presidential election, Human Rights Watch documented that Kenyan security forces killed at least 37 civilians in opposition strongholds. Not rioters killed in crossfire. Civilians killed by the state in Kisumu, in Mathare, in Kawangware. The headline? Post-election unrest claims lives. Unrest claimed those lives. Not police bullets. Not a security apparatus deployed against specific communities. Not a government that had just survived a disputed election using lethal force to suppress dissent. No. It was unrest. We have been trained to receive violence as weather, predictable, seasonal, survivable, something to be endured and not interrogated. And I want to honor that tradition. Good evening. Here is your Kenya political violence forecast for the upcoming election season. Starting with Nairobi, expect heavy Goonery across most of the CBD with concentrated activities around Mathare and Kibera. Tear gas advisory in effect from week 3 of the campaign through polling day. Please carry your national ID and avoid wearing the wrong color in certain wards. Moving to the Rift Valley, a moderate risk of targeted displacement, particularly along historical fault lines. Residents in mixed ethnicity areas should monitor the political temperature closely and have a contingency plan by mid-October. As of Coast Province, Likoni remains a perennial hotspot. We are forecasting a 70% chance of politically motivated violence in the 2 weeks before election day, consistent with patterns observed in 97, 2007, and 2017. And if you ask about Western Kenya, its risk is elevated, particularly in areas with contested parliamentary seats. Expect heavy involvement from informal youth groups operating on short-term contracts. Duration campaign season only, terms non-renewable. That was funny, and it shouldn't have been. Because every single thing I just described is documented, real, recurring, and completely unprosecuted. The realization of political violence in Kenya is not an accident of culture. It is the result of a very specific, very deliberate decision made repeatedly by people with the power to make different decisions, to treat violence as a regrettable but acceptable democratic competition. And the reason they keep making that decision is simple. It works. But weather doesn't have a budget line. So let's follow the money all the way to the invoice. Here's the thing about Kenyan political violence that the press conference version never tells you. It has an invoice. Not a metaphorical invoice, not a moral debt, an actual financial transaction documented by two separate government commissions, referenced in ICC filings, described in detail by witnesses who testified under oath and somehow never prosecuted. Let's look at the receipts. In 2008, the Commission of Inquiry into Post-Election Violence, the Waki Commission, did something radical. It followed the money. What it found was not chaos. What it found was a supply chain. Politicians connected to both sides of the 2007 political divide had funded, armed, and directed ethnic militia groups. The commission documented cash payments, vehicle provisions, communication equipment, specific instructions on targets. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the documented operational structure of Kenyan political violence. And if it looks like a procurement chain, if it looks like a government tender, a contractor relationship, that's because that is exactly what it actually is. The political class outsources violence the same way it outsources road constructions. Find a broker who knows the terrain. Agree on the deliverables. Transfer funds through channels that are just obscure enough to create deniability and wait for the results. VAAS, or Violence as a Service, is a full-spectrum political violence platform offering end-to-end solutions for the discerning electoral client. Our services are scalable, deniable, and have a proven track record across 5 Kenyan election cycles. Our basic package covers crowd disruptions, opposition rally interference, and strategic intimidation of polling agents, ideal for budget-conscious parliamentary candidates. Our standard package adds targeted displacements of opposition-leaning communities, coordinated social media rumor campaigns, and post-incident narrative management recommended for gubernatorial races. And our premium package, very popular, includes all the above plus pre-drafted condemnation statements, a curated list of scapegoats, and what we call institutional memory erasure. Our proprietary service ensuring that by the next election cycle, guess what? Nobody quite remembers who paid for what. The Waki Commission named names. It produced a sealed envelope. Remember that envelope? Containing individuals to be referred for prosecution. That envelope went to Kofi Annan. The ICC process began. 6 individuals were indicted. Then the African Union lobbied against the ICC. Then Kenya's parliament voted to withdraw from the Roman statutes. Then witnesses were intimidated, bought off, or in some documented cases, killed. Then the cases collapsed. The commission existed. The evidence existed. The names existed. The accountability, sadly, did not exist. And here is the business logic of that outcome. If you can fund violence, win an election, and face zero legal consequence, you have just proven to every political actor in the country that the model actually works. You have just made violence rational. And now that we know who is paying, who exactly are they buying, we are about to meet the people this system has specifically designed to exploit. Kenya has a youth bulge and an unemployment crisis. And Kenya has a youth violence problem. And if you think those are two separate issues, if you have mentally filed them under different government ministries, different press conferences, different NGO reports, I need you to pay attention for the next few minutes because they are the same problem, they are the same policy, and they are the same politician. The average age of a Kenyan MP sits in the mid 50s. The median age of a Kenyan is 19. The parliament that makes decisions about young people's future looks nothing like young people. That is not an accident. A political class that genuinely invested in youth power would be engineering its own replacement. So instead, it engineers their dependency. Stage 1, manufacturing the conditions. Kenya's youth unemployment rate, as per the International Labour Organization figures, not mine, sits above 35%. In informal settlements like Mathare, Kibera, and Mukuru, it is higher. These are the same constituencies that receive the lowest per capita investment in public education, the lowest HELB loan disbursement rates, and the highest concentration of unresolved land grievances. The system does not fail these young people by accident. It fails them by design, and then it offers them a contract. Stage 2, the offer. The broker, not the politician, always one or two levels removed, approaches through existing social networks, a youth group, a gang with political affiliations cultivated since the last cycle, a community elder who owes a favor. The offer is simple: cash. Between 500 and 2,000 shillings per assignment. Sometimes transport, sometimes implicit promise of protection, which costs nothing to say and less to honor. To put that in context, for a young man in Mathare who has been unable to find formal employment for 2 years, who has debt, who has a mother asking about rent, 2,000 bob for one evening's work is not a morally simple decision to refuse. It's an economic calculation that the political class has deliberately engineered him to make. Boniface Mwangi, a photographer and activist, someone who has spent more time in those streets than most people make policy about them, has documented this recruitment pattern extensively. It's not invisible. It's not even underground. It happens in the open, in the weeks before an election, in places where everyone knows what is happening and nobody with the power to stop it chooses to. Stage 3, deployment. The youth are used for crowd disruption, for intimidation of opposition polling agents, for targeted attacks on communities identified by the broker, from instructions from the politician as needing to be suppressed. Stage 4, abandonment. The election ends. The broker disappears. The cash is gone. There is no follow-up, no job, no protection, no acknowledgement that any of this even happened. In my research, I found a job listing I'd like to share with you. Position: political mobilization specialist. Contract type: seasonal. Election cycle only. Reporting to the broker. Name varies by constituency. Employer: technically nobody. Key responsibilities you want to know: attend designated political events and ensure the appropriate atmosphere is maintained. Respond to field directives in real time. Thirdly, exercise discretion regarding employer identity at all times. Requirements: youth, hunger, literal or figurative, both preferred, proximity to a designated flashpoint constituency, limited access to formal employment alternatives, willingness to operate in ambiguous legal territory. Compensation, you ask? One-time payment, cash, no receipts. Benefits? None. Career progression? None. Pension? None. Witness protection if arrested? Also none. We look forward to hearing from you. Kenya Kwanza, Azimio, DCP, all of them, we are one. This is not a joke about youth. This is an indictment of a political economy that has decided young Kenyans are more useful as instruments than they are as citizens. The same MP who will stand at a youth conference in Westlands and talk about empowerment, about Hustler Fund, about AGPO, about opportunities for the next generation, is funding a broker who is in Mathare that same week. Same budget, different line item. So, the youth get used, the pipeline is running, and the politician gets what exactly? Let's do the math, the actual math on what political violence gives as returns. Stay with me here. Because what I'm about to show you is the part most political analysts skip. Not because they don't know it, but because once you see it, the whole system becomes impossible to explain as anything other than deliberate. I want to show you a number. Kenya's voter turnout in the August 8th, 2017 presidential election, nearly 80% of registered voters, one of the highest in the country's electoral history. Kenya came out in enormous numbers. Despite everything, they still showed out. Kenya's voter turnout, October 26, 2017, presidential rerun. The same country, the same registered voters, 10 weeks later, 38.8%. In Luo Nyanza, the opposition's strongest base, the turnout didn't just drop, it effectively collapsed. Some communities recorded single-digit participation, not because people had stopped caring about politics, but because the conditions required to safely cast a vote had been deliberately and systematically destroyed. Here's what I need you to understand about the political logic of what happened. The violence didn't need to happen on election day. It had already done its work. By the time those polling stations opened near empty in October, the suppression was complete. You don't need to stop people from voting if you've already convinced them that voting is dangerous. Which brings me to what I'm calling the Gun ROI Calculator. Because if we are going to be honest about what political violence is in Kenya, we must be honest that it is a financial instrument, and financial instruments have returns. Let's model a specific scenario. A contested parliamentary seat in a swing constituency. The incumbent needs to suppress opposition turnout by approximately 50,000 votes to win comfortably. 800 times your investment. There's no legal business in Kenya, no legitimate investment vehicle, no market instrument, no commercial venture that returns 800 times your money in 5 years. Political violence is Kenya's most profitable investment class. And the best part? They don't even have to admit it happened, because Kenya has a very specific, very well rehearsed theater for that. I want to read you a statement, and I need you to guess which politician said it. And after that, which election. Ready? I condemn in the strongest possible terms the violence that has gripped parts of our country. Those behind this senseless destruction will be brought to justice. We must protect the peace that Kenyans have worked so hard to build. Kenya is bigger than this. Who do you think said it? Give up? Doesn't matter really. They all said it. Every cycle, every election, 2007, 2013, 2017, 2022. And I'm 100% sure that they might say it come 2027. Same statement, different letterhead. It's almost impressive. The consistency, the discipline, the commitment to a script that has never once resulted in a prosecution. I want to introduce you to the Kenyan political violence statement generator. The architecture is clear. 5 interchangeable phrases. Mix, match, recycle. Phrase 1, I condemn in the strongest possible terms. It signals seriousness without committing to any action. Condemn is perfectly calibrated, stronger than concerned, weaker than prosecute. It is the rhetorical equivalent of a yellow card in a game with no referee. Phrase number 2, those responsibles will be held accountable. The passive voice is doing enormous work. Will be held. By whom? In what time frame? Under what legal mechanism? Questions for a day that never arrives. Phrase 3, we must protect the peace, not restore. Protect, implying the peace still exists, which implies the violence was an aberration rather than a policy, which is very helpful if you funded the aberration. Phrase number 4, Kenya is bigger. Kenya is bigger than this. Geographically accurate, politically meaningless. Kenya is 580,000 square kilometers. Very big. Very huge, tells us nothing about who paid the broker. Phrase number 5, the closer. We are one Kenya. deployed when the violence has been ethnically targeted. A reminder that we are one. From a politician whose coalition just spent 3 weeks reminding specific communities that they are not the right ethnicity for wherever they live. Any combination works. You can run them in any order. The output is always the same. A statement that performs accountability without producing anything. In 2007-2008, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, later ICC inductees for their alleged roles in organizing the violence, both issued public condemnations of the very violence that they were accused of orchestrating. The condemnations were reported, the ICC cases were open, and then the cases collapsed. In 2017, after security forces killed at least 37 civilians in opposition strongholds, documented by Human Rights Watch, Interior CS Fred Matiang'i, and now one of the candidates that is running for president, appeared before cameras to defend the operations as necessary for the restoration of order. Not a single officer faced prosecution. And in 2024, the Gen Z protests, young people largely unaffiliated with any political party marching against a finance bill. The Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights documented over 60 deaths, 60. President on camera called the president on camera called the protesters outliers who had been infiltrated by criminals. He called the whole thing treasonous. 60 people dead. Outliers, treasonous. The theater of denial has one function: to absorb accountability, to provide a recorded moment of official concern that can be referred as evidence that the government took the matter seriously, while ensuring that no action follows that will disrupt the underlying system. Kenya has commissioned multiple major inquiries into election violence. The Waki Commission, the Kriegler Commission, the TGRC. Each one produced findings. Each one produced recommendation. Each one was received, acknowledged, filed, and substantially ignored by the political class that commissioned it. The commissions are part of the theater. They are what you convene when you need to demonstrate that you are taking things and something seriously enough, while ensuring that taking it seriously has no practical consequence. You see, the statements are free. The theater is free, but the violence costs something, and the bill has never been sent to the people who actually ordered it. Let's find out who actually pays. There's a version of this story that gets told in economic reports and investor briefings. It uses words like headwinds and instability and elevated risk environment. It is written for people who are not in Kenya in January 2008, for people who did not watch the Rift Valley ban on a television screen and understand in real time that the country they thought they knew had just been revealed as something more fragile than they'd ever allowed themselves to believe. I'm going to give you some numbers now. And I need you to remember that each of these numbers represents people, not statistics. People who had plans that January, rent to pay, school fees due, crops in the ground, a business they had spent years building. The World Bank estimated that the 2007-2008 post-election violence cost Kenya $1 billion in direct economic losses. Tourism, Kenya's second largest foreign exchange earner, collapsed. Safari bookings cancelled. Hotels emptied. The Maasai Mara, the coast, the Amboseli, places that had nothing to do with the political dispute, gutted, because the world does not distinguish between a burning Eldoret and a peaceful Watamu when it decides whether to board a plane for tourism. Foreign direct investments froze. Companies evaluating Kenya as a regional hub quietly moved those conversations to Kigali and Dar es Salaam. Some sadly never came back. The Rift Valley, Kenya's agricultural heartland, was disrupted across 2 full planting and harvest seasons. Farmers displaced could not return to the land that was no longer to a land that was no longer safe. Food prices across the country skyrocketed. And then there are the people themselves. The Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission documented 600 and 63,921 internally displaced persons as a result of the 2007-2008 violence. 663,000 people who left their homes, who were driven from them and did not come back. Many never received full restitution. The government resettlement programs were underfunded, poorly administered, and in some cases used as political instruments themselves. Land was allocated on the basis of political loyalty rather than demonstrated displacement. Meanwhile, the political class that had funded, organized, and benefited from the violence that produced those 663,000 displaced people sat down in Naivasha, brokered by Kofi Annan, and negotiated a grand coalition government. Kibaki kept presidency. Raila became prime minister. Cabinet posts were distributed. Both sides of the political violence got a seat at the table that the violence had set. The architects of the system were rewarded with power sharing arrangements. The people displaced by the system were rewarded with IDP camps. Think about that. I want to show you a bill. The political class does not pay this bill. They never have. They negotiate their way into power, access public resources, and the cost of the violence they funded is borne entirely by the people who had no say in whether it was even ordered. The farmer in Burnt Forest who could not plant for 2 seasons, the hotelier in Malindi who could not make payroll, the child in Mathare who missed a year of school because the school was used as a refugee center, the business owner in Kisumu whose shop was destroyed, who received no compensation and who started again from nothing, because starting again from nothing is what Kenyans do when the alternative is not starting at all. These are not collateral damages of democracy. They are predictable, documented, recurring costs of a political economy that has decided that violence is a rational electoral tool and that the people who bear its costs are not the people who need to be convinced to stop. So, we now know what it costs. We even know who pays it. We know who doesn't. The question is, can we actually stop it? And if we can, will we? This is the part most commentary skips. And guess what? At the Kenyan week that was, we're not going to skip it. I want to be honest with you about something before we go any further. There is a version of this segment that writes itself very easily. I give you 3 bullet points about civic engagement. I quote Nelson Mandela. I tell you that change begins with each one of us. I thank you for watching. And then the credits roll. And everything I've shown you for the last 30 odd minutes means nothing. So, I'm not going to do that. Because the system we've been describing, the procurement chain, the youth pipeline, the theater of denial, the return on investment calculator, it does not respond to inspiration. It responds to cost. The only way to break it is to make it more expensive to run it than it is to stop it. That is not romantic, but it is actually the gospel truth. Case 1. Fear of prosecution. The 2013 general election was, by the standards of Kenya's recent electoral history, marked less violent than 2007. Not perfect, not peaceful everywhere, but the scale of organized political violence was demonstrably lower. The most credible explanation? 6 senior political figures had just been indicted by the ICC, and the possibility, however imperfect, of personal legal consequence had changed the calculation. The ICC process was flawed. It was politically manipulated. It was eventually dismantled. But here is what it actually proved. Even in failure, political violence in Kenya is not ideological. It is transactional. And transactional behavior changes when the transaction becomes unprofitable. The problem is not that the accountability doesn't work. The problem is that we have never built it domestically. The Waki Commission in 2008 recommended a special tribunal for Kenya. a domestic accountability mechanism with a specific mandate to prosecute perpetrators of election violence, including those who funded and organized it. The commission was explicit. If Kenya did not create this tribunal, the matter would go to the ICC. Guess what? Kenya did not create the said tribunal. The matter went to the ICC. The ICC cases unfortunately collapsed, and the special tribunal recommendation has been sitting in an archive for 19 years, available for any parliament to implement. Sadly, it's been implemented by none. That is not a coincidence. A parliament populated by people who benefit from the absence of a special tribunal is not going to create one unprompted, which means the pressure for it has to come from somewhere else. Case 2. Documentation and exposure. In 2013, the Uchaguzi platform, the crowdsourced real-time incident mapping, changed the speed at which violence was visible, reported and responded to. It made the geography of organized intimidation legible in real time. In 2024, the Gen Z protest movement did one thing with enormous discipline. It refused political party ownership. It specifically and publicly rejected the attempts by established politicians to attach themselves to the movement. That refusal is not just aesthetics, it was strategic, because the way political violence gets introduced into legitimate movement is through the broker, the support that comes with condition, the conditions that look like co-option and end up looking like chaos, that discredits everything, and I mean everything, the movement has built. The Gen Z movement at its most coherent understood this. That understanding is the most important civic education Kenya's young people have produced in a freaking generation. The supply chain of political violence depends on the anonymity of the middle layer. The politician has deniability because the broker exists between them and the violence. The broker has deniability because the foot soldier is the one who threw the stone. But the brokers are not invisible. They operate in communities. They are known. They make calls. They attend meetings. They are present in weeks before an election in ways that, if documented and publicly named, would both increase their legal exposure and decrease their ability to recruit. So, digital documentation, video, screenshot, geolocation is the specific tool, not vague accusation, time-stamped, located, specific evidence of who was where, saying what, to whom, with what apparent purpose. And I want to stop this right here because I want us to talk about what we saw a few weeks back, maybe a few days back, where the MCA of Lakisama was documented talking to young people, telling them that their time is coming now, that they need for these young people to be ready to cause chaos, to harm, to maim. And nothing has happened to him. And we are a year off an election. People, we've got to start doing these things now, because this is not vigilantism. This is what journalists call a source. Build the record. Share it with the journalists who will use it. The anonymity of the broker is so structural. And it can only be structurally disrupted. Journalists, editors, producers, bloggers, anyone who writes or broadcasts about Kenyan politics. You, the podcasters, too. The word clashes has done more work to protect political violence in this country than any other single press statement. It implies equivalence. It obscures direction. It erases the distinction between a crowd that erupts and a group that has been dispatched. When organized political violence is described as clashes, it makes prosecution harder, accountability murkier, and public outrage more diffuse. So call it what it actually is: organized attack, targeted displacement, politically motivated assault. Let the nouns do the work that clashes is designed to prevent. This one is the hardest because it requires something of the young people who are most economically vulnerable to the offer. The honest truth is that you cannot simply tell a young man in Mathare with no income and no rent deadline and a rent deadline to refuse the envelope on moral grounds. That is not a viable ask without addressing the conditions that make the envelope even attractive. But here is what is viable: community-level accountability for recruitment. The broker recruits through existing networks, youth groups, peer relationships, informal hierarchies. Those same networks can apply the inverse pressure. The community that makes recruitment socially costly, that names the recruiter, that refuses to protect him, that treats participation in political violence as a source of shame rather than a source of income, is the community that disrupts the pipeline at the point where it is most vulnerable. This has happened in specific estates, in specific elections. Community elders and youth leaders have successfully made certain areas inhospitable to recruitment. It is not a national solution, but it is a proven local solution. I want to end by being honest about something uncomfortable. Everything I've described today, the procurement chain, the youth pipeline, the return on investment calculator, the theater of denial, the billion-dollar bill paid by ordinary Kenyans, none of it persists without an electorate that continues to return the people who run the system. I know that is not a simple statement. I know that electoral choices are constrained by ethnicity, by geography, by absence of viable alternatives, by the very fear that political violence is designed to produce. I know that blaming voters for the violence of politicians is a form of misdirection that the political class itself employs and deploys very effectively. But I also know that the system runs on a particular form of consent. Not active consent, not enthusiastic consent, but the passive consent of a public that has decided, understandably, rationally, exhaustedly, that the cycle cannot be broken. The only thing I can tell you with evidence, not optimism, is that the cycle has been interrupted before. Briefly, imperfectly, at significant cost to the people who tried. And that the interruptions, when they happened because enough people decided that the cost of the cycle was higher than the cost of fighting it. The system sadly runs on violence. The violence runs on impunity. And the impunity runs on the assumption that nobody is keeping receipts. But guess what? We keep receipts. If the system runs on violence, and we've seen tonight exactly how and why and who profits, then the question is not whether we can starve it. The question is whether we are ready to go hungry for a season. But in that season, we're able to recover a country that will feed us for generations to come. I've been your host, DUI, on the Kenyan week that was. Like, share, subscribe, and if you like the content that we're doing, please do not forget to send it to 1 or 2 or even 100 of your friends. Let's make this a conversation, because guess what? We're the only people who are going to come and save this country. Like we always say, receipts over vibes always. Stay tuned for all the other episodes that we've lined up. Until the day we have this election, we are going to change the narrative that this country has held. We are going to question every position that they've held inherently, and we're going to put our political class on the weighing scale. And if they do not meet merit, it is our assertion that we will have to remove them by hook or crook. It's been your host, DUI. Again, receipts over vibes always, and Baraka Tele.